Welcome to Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth, the podcast where we explore the beautiful, messy and transformative magic that happens when we dare to go within. I'm your host, Robin Harris, and in each episode we'll dive into real, honest stories from people who've faced their fears, embraced their vulnerabilities and discovered unexpected growth in their personal lives, careers, or businesses. This is a space for deep listening, open hearts, and soul-nourishing conversations. Because when we meet ourselves in our rawest moments, that's often where our greatest wisdom starts. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth podcast. And today I am absolutely delighted. I have got a most amazing guest with me. It's Oli Cohen. And Oli is a London-based cinematographer and photographer. He's filmed all around the world on documentaries, narrative films and commercials, as well as projects for non-government organisations such as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and Save the Children. He also runs Life Stories, turning people's lives into amazing documentaries. So, Oli, it's fantastic to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here, Robin.
And as you know, I start every podcast by asking the guests 3 questions. And the first one of those is, what makes your story relatable for others?
Well, I think it's really important to seize those pockets of happiness that come along and do whatever you can to, practice gratitude if that works for you, do all the things that are generally going to make your life more pleasant. Fundamentally, I think the human condition is tragic and sad because we're all going to experience grief. We're all going to lose our loved ones, and that's a sad, painful thing. And on some fundamental level, I think that we all know this, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And I lost my sister a few years ago, and the grief really affected me, and it still does. So it's actually difficult for me to talk about it like this. But yeah, I mean, grief is such a personal thing, and it's such a subjective thing. At the same time, it's something that we all have. So while it's subjective, there's also universality to it, and it reminds us of what it actually means to be human, and that we're all in this together.
Absolutely. And while we can very much be connected through joy, but also I think there is that universality of that deep, raw experience that when we can be open about it and when we can share it in things like telling our life story, telling the life story of the person, then that does connect us. It is a very special gift. Maybe not a gift as I co-host a bereavement support group with a colleague of mine. She always says that it's a gift we would never choose, but there is something bittersweet and very precious about even how it can connect us more strongly to the person or to the memory of that person. So just very briefly then, who do you feel will gain the most from listening to this conversation?
I'd say anybody who wants to connect better with their loved ones or find a way how they can capture their stories and their memories, and also just generally to have better conversations with people.
Definitely, those important conversations and not to put them off, isn't it? So, what do you hope people will take away from this conversation?
That people can increase their happiness by thinking about themselves less, by thinking about other people more, and by being more curious, reconnecting with that sense of wonder that we have, or we certainly had that as children. We kind of tend to lose it, but I think that it's still within all of us, that the curiosity to think about other people more and to listen better, to ask better questions, and sort of break that illusion that we're all isolated when actually we're more connected with each other than I think we can ever properly understand, because I think it goes beyond rational thought. We can feel things. We're connected to each other. Yeah. And
I so love that. There's that thing that we become so self conscious and we're
mm,
so worried and preoccupied about what other people are thinking about us a lot of the time. When
yes,
they're doing the same thing, they're caught up in their own little bubble worrying about what other people are thinking of them. And if we
yes,
could let that go, how much time and energy would we get back for
mm,
exactly that, for connecting in? And what do most of us want? Number one, to feel that we belong, to feel that we're connected, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, that
mm,
community,
yeah.
that interconnection. So that's so
There's a
beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, there's this pandemic of loneliness at the moment. That's what people are calling it, where need to be, people yearn to be listened to and to be understood. And so if you become more interested in others, not only is it helping yourself, it's helping other people as well. And I find that all the time.
Yes, I completely agree. And I love what you said about wonder and the difference between how we see things as an adult versus how we used to see things as a child. And that's very much
Mm,
something I talk about, getting back those childlike eyes of wonder where everything is new and everything is exciting. And what's a rainbow? Why is the sky blue? Look at the
mm,
stars. There's so much that you may have heard them also called glimmers. So much out there now that shows how valuable and how supportive and even healing it is when we can connect in with those things. So that's beautiful, Ollie. Thank you.
thanks.
Going back to what you were sharing a little bit about, you touched on earlier about your sister and how your
Mhm.
experience in losing your sister and her dying led you then to where you are now. As much as you're happy to, would you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I was living and working in Los Angeles at the time, and it was during the pandemic. I sent my sister a message, and I was looking forward to a few things, so I was in quite a good mood. And then she told me that she'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and suddenly I had to like cancel everything. And immediately I was looking at flights and trying to find out where I could stay. And I thought to myself, well, and I spoke to her about it, how long has she got to live? And I thought, well, her son, who's only 8 years old at the time, I thought I've got to how can I help the situation? I thought, well, what I can do is use my skills as a filmmaker to go back to the UK, and document her life story. And I wanted to record some messages from her that could be played to him as he got a bit older. Because that's the thing with children. Well, if you're a child and a parent passes, you never get to see your parent from an adult's perspective. And I thought, well, this is something that I can do. So I flew back with filming equipment, and I had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, which was a strange thing. And yeah, and then by the time I got out of quarantine, her condition had deteriorated massively, and I wasn't able to do it essentially. So that was a huge disappointment. And a while later, I thought to myself that this was such an unfortunate thing, but I'd like other people not to feel the sense of regret that I had, that I wasn't able to do it. So I had the idea to set up life stories, and and obviously the first person first person I recorded was my mum, and then after that it's just grown from there.
And that's such a deeply moving experience to go through, even just listening to it. I can hear in your voice, I can feel how deeply upsetting that was to come all the way back from LA to go through all the challenges that the pandemic and the lockdown created that then meant you weren't able to do what you had hoped to do. And
Yeah.
also for your nephew, such a young age and such a vulnerable age in a sense, because that's when you're starting to become aware of yourself in a whole new way. That age of
Hmm.
7, 8 is kind of that shift in awareness to who you are, who the members of your family are, how you relate to them, and your mother as well is such a pivotal member of your circle, particularly at that age. So it was such a beautiful idea that you had, and to be thwarted in that by such a thing, such a uncontrollable and nebulous, in a sense, thing.
Mm.
And it's great that you were then able to turn that around and still make use of your skills.
Thank you.
But how did that impact you at the time? What did you feel and how did you navigate that?
The whole grieving process, you mean?
The
Well,
whole,
it's
it was so many grieving, so many things to grieve, wasn't it?
mm,
The plans that you'd had, the loss of your sister, the change in your family, COVID,
yeah.
having to leave where you were, and all of those plans that were so looking so positive at the time.
Hmm.
Because grief is so much more than just bereavement, as in
Mm.
somebody dying. There are so many losses, and you had so many of them all at one time.
Yes, and there's more that I haven't mentioned as well. Within a 12-month period, my sister died, my father died, and my marriage fell apart. So that whole thing like buses come at once, and then I kind of decided that I had to come back to the UK to pick up the pieces of my life. Um, so there was a loss of like my community in Los Angeles as well. And how did I cope with it? Um, I'd say I'm still am coping with it, but I'm always going to the sense of loss is always going to be there. But you find certain things that um, connect with you, or people say certain things, and you're like, yeah, I'll take that. I really like that. And you mentioned something earlier about somebody you were speaking to was talking about a gift, how they're. I mean, you didn't go into too much detail, but you said I think you were saying that the grief that this person's experiencing was she was seeing it like a gift, right? You think you said that, and
She
certainly
calls it
Andrew.
the gift that we would never choose,
Yes, that's right.
but when we can really dig into it and when we're able to process it in the way
Yeah.
that grief needs to be processed, not just holding it, but to allow it to work through our whole system and our experience, it can become something very beautiful.
Yes, and I think you're onto something with that. And I don't feel ready to. I don't feel like I'm in a position to sort of talk about that too much because I'm still going through it. But I get. I mean, it's been a few years now, and sometimes I feel. Yeah, I can think about my sister without kind of wanting to cry. That took a while. Um, but um, but I wanted to say Andrew Garfield, the actor, he he was saying a similar thing because he lost his mother, and he said that he actually likes. There's something I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said something along the lines of when he feels sad about his mother and the loss of his mother, he can also see that as a beautiful thing, like a gift, because because what it means is that you love this person, and you still love this person, and it's a reminder of the beautiful thing you had with this person, and it can put other things into perspective, you know, and it can also um, add meaning to your life. You know, if you're left feeling like you're lacking meaning in your life, this is a reminder of actually what's important. And yeah, and there are many things I could talk about on that subject. But what was helpful for me was starting life stories as a way how I can add value to other people's lives and encourage people to lean into perhaps more meaningful, what I would consider to be more meaningful things of their relationships, their love for each other, and just to celebrate that, you know. And yeah, and that's the thing with life stories. I'd like it to be more of a celebration of life rather than something which is the sad thing, because whilst the human condition whilst I think it's sad and tragic, I also think it's a beautiful, wonderful thing to sort of, to celebrate.
I think that's the wonderful thing about us human beings. We can hold, when we get conscious and emotionally intelligent and aware, we realize we can actually hold so many emotions. We don't
Yeah.
have to feel just one or
Right.
another. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the bittersweet, and if
Mm.
it's anticipatory grief, so like yourself coming back hoping to make the video with your sister, and the life stories preparing for, we're not all going to be here forever. How do we put
Mm.
that down? How do we face our mortality and record those precious messages, memories, all of those things that we want to share with those that we're going to be leaving behind?
Mm.
Because maybe we're not going to be here long enough to share it with them, or like you were saying about the child maybe not getting to relate to their parent when they become an adult. And we're now both adults, and it's a different dynamic. So that ability to know I can be sad and I can have happiness as well. I can have joy
Mm.
because I'm sad that I'm losing somebody or I have lost somebody, but I'm joyful that I have this memory of theirs. I have this story of theirs. I have this part of them to treasure forever. Or in the making of, I'm sad because you're not going to be here forever. But I'm so joyful that we got to talk about this honestly. We got to sit down and have an open, honest, raw dialogue. That I got to spend time with you knowing that it's not going to be forever, and therefore treasuring it all the more. Because so often we just take things for granted. Oh, that person, they'll always be there. We'll always have the opportunity to meet up, have a chat, have a phone call. And we just assume, because we don't want to face the actual fact, that that's not there for it. That life can turn on a dime and we can, it can be, we all know that now, having gone into lockdown, just felt like almost a flick of a switch and the world stopped. And you mentioned also about grief,
Hmm.
because we think that if you think of a jar and grief is a ball within that jar, we think that the
Hmm.
ball shrinks over time, where in
Mm.
fact it's the ball stays the same, but the jar, as our life experience goes on and we have more experiences and we do things, the jar grows. So where the ball was tight against the sides of the jar to start with, and we were bumping up against the rawness of that grief regularly on a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis, as the jar grows, that happens less.
Mm.
But like you were quoting from Andrew Garfield, the beauty of it is that grief is still as present when it is reactivated. So when you smell a perfume or an aftershave that the person used to wear, or their favorite flower, or you hear their favorite piece of music, it can take you right back to how close your relationship was and how much you loved them. It's now
Mm,
maybe that bittersweet, maybe still painful, but it's only that way because we love them that much.
right.
So I think that is the gift that life stories brings for people.
Yes. I mean, life stories, I think it adds value to people's lives while the person is still alive, and I don't want to talk about death too much, but because, I think we can make a life story about anybody who's achieved something or lived a certain amount of life. Maybe not not a child, but but uh, but I think the life story films really will come into their own, or they'll be a lot more valuable after the people have passed away. In 20 years' time, then you can look back, because that's the thing that I've found is that people have so few, uh, if any, recordings of their loved ones speaking. And this voice, photographs are great, but there's so much information in the voice, and there's so much information which is non verbal. And on that note, actually, on the subject of listening, I was thinking about this. A lot of listening isn't just actually listening. It's also viewing, and seeing how somebody is, how their body language is communicating. So anyway, the voice isn't recorded, let alone somebody actually speaking and talking about the things that are important to them, and what they believe in, or what their values are, what they care about, and to be able to have that really documented or captured. I think it's a wonderful way to create a legacy for somebody, and in doing that, you're connecting generations. You're making the grandchildren like actually see what their grandparents are like. And it sort of baffles me that this is something which isn't already done. The amount of people that have said to me when I've told them about life stories, they've said, "Oh, I wish I could have had something like this for my grandparent or my parent who passed away." And I think exactly the same thing. I'd love to be able to listen to my grandfather speak. I don't even know what his voice sounds like. I was something like 7 when he passed away, or whatever it was. So I don't know what he sounds like, let alone what his body language was like when he was communicating. I can't remember that. And so you hear all these stories about family members, but they become myth, and they become sort of distorted over time. And they would tell. I think parents tell their children a version of the truth, because they're filtering out for the child's perspective, but then that version of history sort of becomes cemented over time, and so you only hear this very sort of almost two-dimensional version of this person. And so actually the truth? What is this person really like? But you're not going to know, because most people don't have a recording of their ancestors or their grandparents or their parents. So I feel like that's something that should be changed. I'd like to be involved in changing that.
You think you watch movies and people, once their parent partner has died, they're still phoning the answer phone to hear their voice,
Right.
even though it's
Yeah.
not personalized message, it's the standard recording, but
Mm.
it's just to hear their voice, because there is something. And there's something as well when we feel safe with somebody, part of that is their voice. So when we hear somebody's voice, then it gives us that oh, sensation.
Right. Yes.
And I loved what you said about that kind of sanitized view. You know,
Mm.
this is granddad, and granddad loved fishing or whatever granddad
Mm.
loved, but
Mm.
maybe not about granddad's wicked jokes and sense of humor.
Yes.
That, okay, you're sanitizing that, you're filtering that out for a child, possibly, but it would be nice when that child then gets older. I was 3 when my dad's dad died, so I have no memory of him whatsoever. And when my mum's
Mm.
mum died, because my grandfather married again, and that was the wife that I knew, but my mum's mum died when my mum was 16. So obviously I never knew
Mm.
her. But if there wasn't the technology at the time, but it would have been
Mm.
lovely because I'd love to know more about her. I've seen photographs of her, but you know what it's like that a photograph is static, but we get
Mhm.
so much more from an animated, like you were saying, the body language, the facial expression, that little twinkle in somebody's eye.
Yes,
We get that more from
exactly.
moving images and from their voice.
Yes, the emotion is to a large extent in the audio and the sounds. We for whatever reason that's what really affects us. I think there's not anything quite as powerful as music to really emotionally just hit you. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's the same with the voice. Um, it's not just kind of it's not just words and information in words. There's so much more going on there, and it's fascinating to me. Is your grandmother the person? Sorry, I mean, you about to say something, but is your grandmother the person who you'd most like to have had a? How would you most like to hear her talking about her stories and memories? Do you think?
Because she's just a picture to me.
Right.
She was never a part of my life.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, I'm just fascinated by her. And I think also
Mhm.
feeling for my mum, having lost her mum at 16, I cannot imagine what that must have been like. And my mum was the eldest of 5, and then there were 2 more
Mhm.
children from the second marriage. So to be the
Okay.
eldest at 16 and to have 4 younger siblings and suddenly lose your mum, I just, I have no way of knowing what that would be like to go through that experience.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think it's that grandmother who fascinates me because she is kind of an enigma and an unknown. She's part of
Right.
me,
Yeah.
but she's not part of my life, my experience.
Right. Yes. I think many
And
people feel that sort of thing about
yeah,
a
yeah,
grandparent.
it's not uncommon, is it, that
Mm.
don't have an experience of a grandparent or great grandparent that you would have liked to. And maybe if you share some similar characteristics, you think, oh, gosh, I wish I'd known them. Maybe they too were a
Exactly.
musician or something, and I'm the only one in my
Mm.
small nuclear family. So others don't get me the way they might have, or those
Yes.
sorts of things.
Yeah, because it begs the question, like, who are you really? Where does your personality come from? To what extent is it nature or nurture? And then if you could like go back and meet your parents, you could go, oh yeah, wow, and then it's a sense of belonging and a sense of you can actually understand yourself a little bit better.
A sense of your history, your
Mm.
roots, what has, what evolution came to being the point at which you appeared. And I want to
Mm.
just quickly touch on something you were saying earlier about this isn't just about death and dying,
Yes.
but at the same time, death and dying is a part of our life all the time because it's just a cycle.
Hmm.
It's the life, death, life cycle. And my passion as well is to take away that taboo and that fear of
Right.
death and just
That's
to know
wonderful.
that it's a part of everything. Every one of
Mm.
us, death and taxes, the two definites in our experience.
Mm. Mm.
So I think to be able to face it in this way, but it's not a morbid way, it's not a frightening way, it's just an acceptance and an acknowledgement and let's take the fear out of this
Hmm.
and let's connect deeply with that person, with that history, with that root, with that evolution of where I come from and how I belong. And this person has given me X, and I feel so connected to them. And the beauty of all of that, I think that is the treasure of
Hmm.
what you have created.
Well, thank you. Um, Yeah, I mean, I don't claim to be responsible or to be able to help. Um, well, maybe I should have to think. You're making me think about it from a slightly different perspective. Uh, it's a weird one for me. I'm still sort of going through the journey on with it myself. Because I thought I was a lot more at peace with this on this topic than I actually am. I thought I was pretty resilient. But the whole grief has it's affected me. The loss of my sister has affected me more than I imagined it would or could have. I've never experienced something quite like that before, but I've seen lots of quite disturbing things, and I have lost people in the past, and it's has affected me. But this was on another level. So as a filmmaker, I've traveled the world, like you mentioned, and I've been in some quite difficult places, and a lot of hospitals, and in Africa, and I've seen quite really really sad things. But I've had a job to do there, and I've had a camera which has been like some kind of barrier. So there's I've been sort of protected by thinking, well, I've got I'm telling a story here that's important to be told, and I'm seeing other people suffering, and it's affecting me, but I'm able to keep myself together, and I need to because it's not my place to sort of lose it. But anyway, I was I realized that I'm not as resilient as I thought I was. That's my point. And so I thought I was more at peace with death than I am, but I don't know. I feel differently about it on different days. But
Think
I like the fact that you're doing this work.
think every death is different. Every
Mm,
relationship is different.
mm,
So how we respond to each death we experience is going to be different. There's also the fact that death can be cumulative or grief can be cumulative.
right.
So where we've experienced death in the past and bereavement and loss, we may
Mm,
not have processed that. And particularly, I think, in our society where we're not often given the space, the time, the tools, the support,
yes.
the
Yeah.
understanding. How do we, we just shut it down, we shove it under the carpet, we hope it'll go away, but it doesn't.
Yes.
It sits
Right.
there. And when we then experience another grief, well, now we have two shoved under the carpet. The lump's getting bigger. Could trip over that one. And
Yeah.
and all of that work that you did, although yes, I understand that about you have that degree of separation because you're behind a camera and it's not somebody that you are related to or have an investment in the way you would have done to your sister.
Right.
But you're a human being. You were doing that because you cared. You weren't out there
Mm.
just, oh, I'm just going to take some pictures.
Yeah.
Although
It
it was
wasn't
a
a
job, it
holiday.
was a job that
Mm.
you cared about, that you were invested in, and that you saw and you lived through that suffering. You were part of that energy of that suffering.
Hmm.
But if that was something that you then were detached from, maybe didn't explore too deeply, and just put it in the pocket, then that
Mm.
maybe is still in there in the human sense, not in that I was invested in what was going on and it affected me that way, but in that I'm a human.
Mm.
That's painful to watch. We
Hmm.
have mirror neurons as humans and we feel what other people feel.
Yeah.
So, there's all of that going on in there, which does
Yeah.
kind of reduce our resilience if we're not able to know how to support it, to address it and
Right.
work through that.
And it's also there are more layers to it as well because, and I haven't talked about this much, but I'd experienced quite disturbing things, and then we'd finish what we were doing. We might be in some remote place in the desert in Africa, and then we'd jump on a couple of planes, and then before we knew it, we were back in the UK, and 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 I would come home and I'd be like really glad to be home and really grateful for my life. And I feel like actually, all the people in the UK, they complain all the time about one thing or another. But after being in a situation like that, you can think, well, hang on a minute, we've got it so good here. And it was a reminder. I found it going off doing those kind of projects, a reminder of that. So in a way, it was making me feel more grateful about my life, but at the same time, there was a duality of opposites in a way because I'm affected by the really disturbing things that I've seen and felt. But so I kind of, I don't know, it's a slightly confusing thing to navigate. But I thought, okay, well, that was a coping mechanism for me, and it made me think that I was quite resilient. But I'm not so sure anymore.
That culture shock, I've known other
Mm,
people who've been to various places in Africa and done work out there, and I've heard
mm,
of their experiences and their struggles with
mm,
that duality.
mm,
That could be a whole other podcast.
mm,
So, as we round this up, would you just
mm.
share what key message you'd like people to take away from this conversation?
Sure, I would say I'd like to encourage people to be more curious and to listen more. And there's information about there out there with people giving you tips on how to listen more. But I think it can be quite simple. Just genuinely be interested in what they're saying, and then ask appropriate follow-up questions. And when you ask the right questions, people know it and they feel heard and they feel listened to, and they feel an appreciation and a gratitude towards you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So I mean, I could talk a lot more about that, but just to sort of try to condense it, be more curious, and listen more, and make it, so make that effort to connect to your loved ones, and also when you take photographs of your loved ones, I would encourage you to be in that photograph. Get somebody else to take the picture of you and your mum, or you and whoever it is, because you'll look back. Most people, I think, will look back and think, oh, I haven't got enough pictures of me and that person. Because that person on their own, you might have loads of them, but with the two of you together, those photographs become super precious. So I say, get yourself in the picture with that person. And I'd also say to people, start, even sort of subtly, start recording them. So have a conversation with them, and you can just get your phone somewhere nearby. So if you're on a sofa, put your phone on the coffee table or whatever, you're somewhere nearby, and record those conversations. And I'd say make sure the TV's off and there's the radio's off, there's no music on, anything like that that's going to distract. So you can get a recording of them. And it's amazing what you can actually do these days with AI to clean up that dialogue and make it sound closer. The closer the microphone is, the better. But just start recording those conversations, and I think in the future you will be glad you did so.
Beautiful. And I think that is the treasure of what this offers, your whole life stories work, that it is that I'm listening, I'm connecting, I'm really
Mm,
getting to know the person and they're getting to connect with me. And that changes the dynamic, doesn't it? That it changes the relationship and it makes it deeper, it makes it more precious. And then you have even more to remember and celebrate. So
mm.
thank you so much, Ollie, for all that you've shared. I really appreciate it. Can you just let people
Thank
know
you.
where they can find you?
Sure. Well, the Life Stories website is lifestories.media. So I would encourage, if anyone wants to find out more, that's the easiest way, just to go to that website, and there's Instagram links from there. There's also something on there called Life Stories Spotlight, which might be of interest to people. With Life Story Spotlight, we encourage people to get in touch and to nominate somebody who they feel is worthy, for whatever reason, is worthy of their life being turned into a documentary. And this is something that we offer free to all the costs covered, to do the recording and the edit of this person. So lifestories.media.
Thank you. And Ollie's contact details will be in the show notes below this video, so do take a look. And join me again next time when I invite in my next amazing guest. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget also, if you've enjoyed this conversation, you'd like to follow more, hit that subscribe button. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. I hope it's given you a moment to breathe, reflect, and perhaps even see your own story with a little more compassion. If you find this conversation meaningful, I'd love it if you'd share, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps others find their way here too. Until next time, take gentle care, and remember, the journey inwards is where the real growth begins.